Right, I'm going to talk about marling because I'm currently working on the Roy G Biv cardigan. That's by Park Williams, Park and Knit. And it's marled, and it requires it calls for several strands of whatever weight yarn you want, as long as you can get gauge, and it creates a marled effect. Looking at the finished projects on Rav, and the same for other finished projects, some of them are a bit stripy, which isn't the effect that I like to go for. It's absolutely fine if you do, but I prefer it to be like a bit fadey. So I suppose it's kind of like two different techniques in one, if you like. I do have another finished object here to show you. These are my Marled Mania leggings. I haven't actually worn them properly yet because they're a bit big and I can't be bothered to make the I-cord thing. It's supposed to have an I-cord. Actually, I might finish that this afternoon. It's a good idea. It's a bit cold. And anyway, these are a bit more stripy, as you can see. Now that happened because I've actually found this. This is how I made these. It required 2 times sock weight held double. So what I did was I got a bunch of minis and I caked them up, but I connected them with Russian join, and I made 2 cakes, and I just randomly used those cakes together, but in a random way. I never actually thought about the colours that go together, etc. I just did it. And because of that, when the colour ends, let's see, I'm not going to use this again. There we go, there's a join. When the colour ends, wow, that's a bad join. You just get, it just changes. You don't get any kind of gradient with it. And that's what creates the stripes. Like so. Actually, it looks like I did have some kind of pattern to it. Anyway, that's how you get stripes. You by changing the colours quickly, or what's the word? Abruptly, I suppose. How you get a melted marled effect is obviously the exact opposite to that. You need to change the colour slowly. So what I did here, which I'll explain to you, I have two different yarns here. I've got a solid in petrol, and this is a speckled, highly variegated, actually it's not even speckled, is it? A highly variegated, I think that was Baby's Got the Bends. That was my colourway. So yeah, there are two different yarns there. I'm using 4 times sock weight. And so at the bottom here on the hem, I started off with 2 cakes of sock. Sorry, there's dog hair everywhere. That's what happens when you live with a short-haired dog. 2 cakes of sock, and I was working from inside and outside of both the cakes. So that gave me the 4-strand gauge. And then when I got to about here, I switched out one of these, one strand of these, for one strand of this. So I was working from inside and outside of that cake, outside only with that cake, and outside only with that cake. So that gave me, hang on, that gave me this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that's where that comes from. Obviously it's more visible once you go further. So when you start and you only do 1 or 2 rows, you can't see it that well. You need to keep going for at least maybe 6 rows before you start seeing the effect. So don't just give up and think, oh no, that looks crap. Just give it a go. Okay, so we got to there. Where are we? I think I probably went up to about there with the 1 variegated and 3 solid. And I am now currently knitting 1 from the outside of this ball, 1 from the inside and 1 from the outside of this ball, and 1 from the outside of this ball. So there's 3 times variegated and 1 time solid now. So what you're doing is you're kind of watering down, if you like. If you think of it as paint, you're watering down this colour in favour of this colour. Plans going forward would be, actually I haven't thought that far. I really should start thinking ahead. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside outside with that. So do entirely these, like this was entirely blue. And then I will take another solid and start to reintroduce it. So let's say I introduce that, and it'll go back, start going backwards to another solid, if that makes sense. Am I explaining that properly? So you started off with a solid and it melted into a variegated, and then we'll have a variegated block if I've got enough yarn. And then, oh yeah, this is a yarn eater as well, by the way. If you need to use up yarn, then yeah, do this pattern. Yeah, so we'll then have a solid block of the variegated, and then I'll start melting in with 1 strand of another solid and 3 variegated, and then take out a variegated and add another strand of the solid, etc, etc, etc. I hope this is making sense to you. It makes sense in my head anyway. I will likely do a blog post as well. I knocked my tripod. I will likely do a blog post as well because I am on Android. I can't find a decent subtitle closed caption app to for those who can't hear me. So I will do a blog post as well, so it's all written down. Okay, thank you.